Hello, thank you for joining NERC's webinar. Today we're talking about the 2024 ERO Enterprise Compliance Monitoring and Enforcement Program Implementation Plan. I'm Ryan Malden. I'm a senior engineer with compliance assurance here at NERC, and this is my coworker, Christopher.
Yes, I'm Christopher Flowers, senior advisor in compliance assurance here at NERC as well.
And without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. So what is the CMEP and the CMEP IP?
The Compliance Monitoring and Enforcement Program, CMEP, is the program used by the North American Electric Reliability Corporation, NERC, and the regional entities to monitor, assess, and enforce compliance with reliability standards within the United States. The CMEP will also be implemented in Canada and Mexico, consistent with laws and agreements in effect with applicable governmental authorities. The annual implementation plan of the CMEP is dictated by Appendix 4C, Section 3.0 in the Rules of Procedure. It states that NERC will, with input from the regional entities, stakeholders, and regulators, shall identify risk elements and related NERC reliability standards and requirements to be considered in the annual ERO CMEP implementation plan for oversight of registered entities. In order to identify risk elements, NERC will consider data including but not limited to emerging risk, compliance findings, event analysis experience, data analysis, and the expert judgment of NERC and regional entity staff, committees, and subcommittees. NERC uses these risk elements to identify and prioritize county-wide risks to the reliability of the bulk power system.
The implementation plan gives guidance to the employees of the ERO enterprise who are involved with monitoring and enforcement. And through public posting, it informs ongoing conversations with industry about the risks to mitigate. How are risk elements used? Well, we strongly encourage NERC staff and industry to not hyper-focus on the identified requirements and to contemplate a more holistic view of the risk. Rather than confining risk discussions to certain requirements, some entities may, depending on facts and circumstances, benefit from additional perspectives and discussions. So here we see the risk element changes from 2023 to 2024. Physical security was not in the list and it has been brought back. Cold weather response has been expanded to include extreme weather response. Other than that, we see it's generally the same names of the risk elements. And we'll give you a highlight of each one of these. I'll turn it over to Christopher for remote connectivity.
So for remote connectivity, entities must develop controls to prevent or mitigate malicious or unintentional access to the BES cyber assets. Failure to develop controls may compromise the integrity and operability of the BPS. Some concerns and focus areas include exploitation that occur directly against equipment used to monitor, protect, and control the BPS or against externally connected support systems, reviewing and updating more crucial procedures concerning remote access, and ensure that plans are up to date that mitigate the risk posed by unauthorized disclosure and unauthorized modification of real-time assessment and real-time monitoring data. Next, we have supply chain. There's a need for a continued focus on supply chain and mitigation efforts as the BPS continues to evolve and systems become more interconnected. Numerous variations of ransomware attacks accentuate supply chain vulnerabilities, as well as threats from both foreign actors and domestic adversaries, such as the SolarWinds attack, the 2021 Colonial Pipeline attack, 2021 Microsoft Exchange on-premises product vulnerability exploitation, 2021 Log4j vulnerability, and lastly, the 2023 Black & McDonald attack. Underscoring the severity of these supply chain attacks, U.S. Department of Homeland Security, Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Agency require federal agencies to take action in an emergency directive 21-01. Next, we have physical security. But just as the cyber arena continues to evolve, so does the threat of physical security incidents. Potential for physical attacks have increased as the adoption of advanced technologies compound the reliance on digital controls and communication systems. National security risks such as civil unrest, riots, labor action, or strikes, and other events could create potential issues around physical security of the BPS, as well as safety of critical personnel necessary to carry out the actions needed to maintain the reliability operation of the BPS. As noted in the 2023 State of Reliability Technical Assessment, concerns regarding growing physical security threats to the BPS led FERC to issue an order that directed NERC to assess the effectiveness of reliability standard SIP-014-3, focusing specifically on the inclusion applicability criteria, associated risk assessments, and whether a minimum level of physical security protections should be established for all BPS transmission stations, substations, and primary control centers. Next, we have incident response. By including incident response, we really want to focus on ensuring continuous improvement of incident response plans instead of focusing on past planning. There's a need for a continued focus on early detection in response to cyber attacks and incidents, and adopt controls that can be executed to protect critical systems. For the remaining 4 risk elements, I'll turn it back over to Brian.
Thank you, Christopher. Stability studies. The risk here is that planning studies won't be sufficient. Specific concerns identified in the CMEP IP include events with tripping of inverter-based resources during disturbances are increasing in both frequency and severity. That indicates issues with dynamic model accuracy, as well as issues with the robustness and thoroughness of stability studies. Also, some plant commissioning practices appear to have significant shortfalls for ensuring plant configuration matches the transmission planner, the planning coordinator, and the transmission owner expectations. And also, compliance monitoring enforcement program reviews of transmission planning studies have traditionally focused more heavily on the development of contingency lists, as well as steady state studies. Building off that knowledge, CMEP staff may further seek to understand how entities are effectively studying within the time domain to preemptively identify system performance issues following simulated system disturbances. The selection of cases, contingencies, and monitored elements should be evaluated for robustness. The selection of criteria and thresholds should be evaluated for appropriateness, thoroughness, and alignment between neighboring entities. This risk may also be associated with incorrect protection system settings and modeling inaccuracies. These other areas should be considered as additional areas to investigate to gain assurance stability studies are effective. Given these risks, we've identified the following requirements: TPL1 for the study content, and SIP-14 as it uses these studies to make important security decisions, as mentioned earlier. Next, we have inverter-based resources. I mentioned that a little on the last slide. There are many resources showing the need to understand and more accurately model inverter-based resource characteristics as we adapt to an ever-increasing amount of inverter-based resources on the grid. Monitoring is being instructed to focus on inverter-based resources staying online when needed, ERC 24, inverter-based resources being in models correctly, Mod 26, and interconnection processes supporting that, FAC 1 and FAC 2. We have already seen large unintended reactions of inverter-based resources in response to events, and we can take what we've learned to better account for and remedy situations before they happen. Very recently in November, NERC released the Inverter-Based Resource Performance Issues Report, which contains further information and recommendations to share with registered entities. Next, we have facility ratings. The accuracy of facility ratings is a cornerstone of being able to use and protect the bulk electric system. Inaccurate facility ratings undermine the usefulness of stability studies which is another risk element that we just talked about. Operators depend on facility ratings to provide reliable system operating limits and interconnection reliability operating limits, SOLs and ROLs. And these limits inform operating decisions. Protection engineers rely on facility ratings to protect equipment from damage while also allowing equipment to stay online when it is both safe and most needed. Some registered entities have facility ratings based on inaccurate equipment inventories, or ratings are not being updated during projects or following severe weather. Given its importance, CMEP staff are urged to understand the controls that an entity has put in place to track facility ratings, which can be a huge amount of data. Knowing how an entity has established an accurate baseline for its data and how it handles any changes going forward from that baseline can give a good indication of if an entity is struggling. Work Order 881 will lead to changes by mid-2025 in how some entities define and use facility ratings, which will increase accuracy of transmission system capabilities based on actual conditions. ERO enterprise activities will continue to focus on accurate transmission ratings, as the equipment identification risk is not changing. Once FERC Order 881 comes into effect, ERO enterprise staff will focus on a successful implementation for transmission owners who have to update their methodology to clearly document ambient rating calculation methods. The ERO Enterprise Themes and Best Practices for Sustaining Accurate Facility Ratings report contains a myriad of references concerning facility ratings from multiple sources in the ERO Enterprise as well as the NATF. It also contains best practices to help deal with 4 themes: lack of awareness, inadequate asset and data management, inadequate change management, and inconsistent development and application of facility ratings methodology. There's also a CMEP practice guide with further guidance for ERO enterprise staff that is publicly available. Finally, we have extreme weather response. Extreme weather events encompass a wide range of situations that can cause major bulk electric system impacts. Specifically, we are looking for the grid being prepared for cold weather, hot weather, and geomagnetic disturbance events. The monitoring of EOP 11 and the upcoming EOP 12 provides a lot of opportunities for discussions with generator owners that may not have occurred before. There are a lot of opportunities here to learn. TPL 7 is brought in to ensure being prepared for possible GMD events, and that resources such as the NOAA Space Weather Prediction Center are being used as appropriate. Thank you for joining the webinar today. Further questions about risk elements or monitoring of a particular entity are probably best directed to your contact at an ERO Enterprise Regional Entity. NERC Compliance Assurance can be reached at complianceassurance@nerc.net.